again, hello everybody. My name is Kevin Hale. I'm the program chair of criminal justice at Post. I've been in this role for, well, it's almost 3 years. In the early spring, it'll be 3 years. But I've been with Post teaching since 2011. I served as a police officer from 1990 to 2019, the last 18 years as the police chief. And interestingly enough, I met John. I don't know if I guess I'll let him explain that, but I met John a long time ago in a classroom. And while early on in my career, I was taking courses at then Mattituck Community College, which is just over the Route 84 from Post. And I always remembered him and followed his career. And so we bring, the both of us, I think, bring quite a bit of experience. To our program. It's an interesting program, and there's a lot more you can do with criminal justice than just simply becoming not that just a police officer or corrections officer. Not that I'm minimizing those, but there's so much more you can do with this. So, John, I'll let you introduce yourself.
Sure, sure. Are you guys able to see the PowerPoint at this point?
Yes.
Okay,
Yep.
great. I just wanted to make sure because I have my little screen here at home and I couldn't really tell. Well, Kevin mentioned that we ran into each other in a classroom probably about 30 plus years ago, that I would think at this point. I've been teaching for about 40 plus years, and I've only been here at Post for the last 2.5 years. I followed Kevin into the role. Before that, my career was really in the Connecticut Department of Correction, where I worked through the ranks there, 27 years roughly, and started as a correction officer, which is, I think, one of the things Kevin and I both bring to this is, we talk about education, the importance to beginning in a career, having an idea where you want your career to take you. And that's basically what I think education helps to serve, is to really be the launch pad for you to not just know where you want to start, but hopefully will bring you through heights as you go through your career to whatever level you want to achieve. I was fortunate enough spending that amount of time in there to start as a correction officer, work through the ranks, and I did run the agency for 8 years. So I think we both got some insight. Kevin was one of the longest serving chiefs in Connecticut, which I think really says something. Kevin, almost 20 years, right? 19 years?
Yeah, it was just over a little over 18 years.
18. Okay. Yeah.
It seemed like 19 or 20 though, John, at times. So they're 120 sometimes. But
There you go. All right. So I guess we can get started, right?
yeah. Yep.
Okay. So we're going to kick off on really, what can I do with a degree in criminal justice, and really talk a little bit about all the areas that it can take you. Hopefully, as we see things along the way, we'll be able to really kick it around and say, well, if I wanted to do a certain type occupation, how should I prepare? So we want to talk a little bit about, what is criminal justice and how it incorporates a number of different degrees of study. I always talk to it about being, I guess I'd say, the practical application of the social sciences. Really, you got to know a bit about people, how they behave in groups, how cultures fit together in a mosaic in our society. And if you're in criminal justice, whether it's law enforcement, corrections, courts, you're going to have to really be the person who is the authority and who has the ability to understand, to lead people, hopefully lead people away from problems and really towards solutions. So we're going to talk about pathways and really what's available, a little bit about how you should prepare for it in terms of hopefully, through Post, we have a really good plan. We offer some, not just basic education through an associate or more advanced education through a bachelor's, but also within those, we have the opportunity for minors and concentrations we'll talk about. As well, a couple things that I think are great at Post is we have a career office. We also bring in some of our alumni, guest speakers as well, people who are working in the field to help you get an idea of how to navigate it. They'll speak to you from their experience, which I think there's no better teacher than experience itself. Okay, so talk a little bit about some of the stuff you might need. Kevin, jump in anytime you want. I have a habit of talking fast and long. Kevin
Yeah,
knows that.
no
But
worries.
again, yeah. So some of the areas that are going to be really important, is to understand first where our thrust is. Police, courts, corrections. That's pretty much what we cover very thoroughly. We start you on the basics, and then we really want you to get to a mastery, particularly if you're a bachelor student. Focus, and you'll see it in our objectives, is that we really try to make sure critical thinking is the base element, the foundation of things that you will do in the entire career, not just from entry, but hopefully bringing you to a capstone of your career. Ethics, that's the one thing I think that many departments spend a bit of time on it, but I think you really should spend a good portion of your education doing the analysis of not what ethical challenges might happen, but know that they will. And you need to know how to think so that you can really be able to have a successful way to get through it and understand that you can control the future on those things rather than fall victim to not knowing what you do. They are coming, they will be there. I don't care if you're police, courts, or corrections, they're coming. Research, that's important. I know now today it's gotten almost a little bit too easy using things like chat GPT and artificial intelligence and the like. But one of the things that you have to do is really be able to speak in your own voice constantly, consistently, and be able to reach people, be able to connect with people. So we do emphasize that. You'll find that you'll speak in the classroom a lot. Even when you work through a project, the end of the semester, we spend a good amount of time collegiately doing this, where we all would support one another in development of projects and the like. I just went through that in criminology, and they were awesome. I was very impressed by the students' ability. It's a 400 level course, of course, and they've had other opportunities to practice this, but really I was impressed. I said, they're almost ready to take over a class at some point and be able to lead a classroom, which really speaks to what we try to accomplish with our students. Um, Other things that we will tell you today is that hopefully, if a student wants to get involved with a criminal justice education, we will give you the core for the entire criminal justice system, but we hope that you'll have a path. And Kevin and I will talk a little bit about concentrations and maybe where you go beyond, just your initial education. I think that one thing that's made Kevin who he is today, and I think that you'll speak to that, we'll probably all speak to that at some point, is that continuous path of education really is that spiral of continuous improvement that you want to have mark you as a professional. So always keep in mind, keep things on the table.
John, if I can,
Yeah,
if I can
jump
just
in.
jump in there for a minute. So, a couple of points on that previous slide. So, and John mentioned ethics, and I'm not sure there's a more critical aspect of someone in the criminal justice field, whether you're in police, corrections, courts. The essence of our success, the essence of what, and I say we because I think we're still in it, John, right? We're still in the periphery, but
Absolutely.
the essence of what we do is the public trust. And if the public, if a police department or a corrections official or a judge or prosecutor, or departments lose that public trust, then it's the jobs, the profession, the task becomes almost impossible. So we have an obligation as officers and executives to lead the way and to be ethical people. And we try to, as we redevelop courses, try to get that point in there. We have a class dedicated to ethics, but really it's we try to make it part of our core objectives in every course that we teach or redevelop. So that's just critical, and it can't be as John said, there are going to be tests. There are going to be situations that criminal justice professionals are going to face inevitably that's going to test that. And so we can't stress that enough. And then the other thing on here, the lower part of the page, John mentioned communication and research skills. Communication, as again, is another really important part of what of what is done. It's verbal and written. And I'll just give you a very quick example of written. So if I'm a police officer today and I make I have a case and I make an arrest, um, and I do a sloppy job on the report and it goes to court, um, that's going to come back and bite me at some point. And here's how it normally goes. I would submit the report. It somehow makes its way to court, and then about 2 years from now, that case may go to trial. And so, in between today and 2 years from today, I'm going to go on 1,000 calls and write 250 reports and do all this, and I'm not going to remember much of anything. And if it's so we go into trial, and there's John's been in the witness chair probably more than I have. It's not a good day if either plaintiff's counsel or defense counsel um, is having their way with you. It really, if you're not prepared, and all you have is, if I have this lousy report or this substandard report I wrote today, that's what I have to testify to 2 years from today. So it is so important. Communication skills is so important. AI is not necessarily the answer to that. And we're seeing that in courtrooms across America now, where AI is making its way in, and judges and prosecutors are really beginning to struggle with that a little bit. So just a couple of points that just jump off the page, and again, we stress those communication skills as well, because we're often judged on that as well. And it just, the documentation, if it's not written down, it didn't happen, right? It doesn't exist. So, John, you can go ahead. I just wanted to touch on those
Yeah.
2 points.
Yeah. No, it's funny, this last week, you mentioned that what you write at the time becomes the record, and it's years and years sometimes. And just to share a quick story, I was just contacted by the Attorney General's office regarding a case that is, gosh, it's 2017. I've been retired for many, many years. And this case actually named me after I had left. And I said, geez, my recollection. They said, oh, I'm glad you asked, because we've got all your documentation, all your reports. I read through it, and it was like it was yesterday, and it was clear as a bell for me. So what Kevin just said to you, absolutely true. When you get the art down and you do it, and you do it well, you do it in your own voice, comes time to go to court, when you have to, it certainly makes it a lot easier, and you're a lot more credible because of what you wrote so many years ago. All right. So just as an anecdote of sorts, but it's very valuable. Okay. So I think we got up to here. Give me 1 second there. All right. Um, Talk about pathways, and a lot of people that we have, Kevin, would you agree a lot more of them are focused initially on law enforcement, police officer, detective, federal agent. We're seeing a lot of folks now interested in the sciences. When I say
Right.
sciences, forensic science. We've had some bridging with science majors into criminal justice for the forensics role. I've had a number of folks now interested in corrections for probation, parole, and correction officer. So again, it's very, very diverse. And I think one of the themes that a lot of people are looking at is coming in with an idea in mind, but also keeping an open mind, because as you start to study, particularly an intro course, you learn about the levels. So if you want to be a police officer, is a good example. You could be a local police officer, county police officer if you're in a state with the sheriff's departments. You could be a state police officer, and then you jump up federal level, and you start to see just how many agencies there are. I think last time I looked, the federal government said for the uniform crime reports, we have over 18,000 law enforcement agencies that contribute statistics to the uniform crime reporting system, or the National Incident-Based Reporting System. So quite a great opportunity, and that exists whether it's law enforcement or it's corrections, probation, parole. You're going to see it in a very similar fashion with the tiers. So job prospects, really good. Legal, same type of thing. You're going to see you have local courts falling under a state system. Sometimes counties are broken out those court systems, and then again, federal, and then you have federal appeals courts all the way up to the U.S. Supreme Court. So nice opportunity if you're really interested. There are opportunities every state across the country and every territory in the United States as well falls under U.S. law. So, legal judicial, we have a lot of folks, and we will talk a little bit about concentrations perhaps when we could talk about some students are interested in legal studies, maybe going to law school, criminal justices crossing through that as well. I like the idea of when I worked in corrections, we really started working with victims of crime, and that creates a whole other avenue or silo for work with criminal justice, dealing with the victim, dealing with the court system, dealing with the corrections department, probation, parole. So a lot of great stuff. Want to help people? Police officer role is a great role, but so is probation and parole. Juvenile is an entirely separate system in most states. And then you have adult probation, parole, and you have facilities also that deal with the secure treatment of juveniles, secure confinement of adults, as well as treatment. So lots and lots of different types of things you can get into. Um, One of the things that I thought was really important to bring up today is how so much in the technology area is growing. And at the same time, a lot of companies are hiring people for specialties in both security, but as well for taking apart a lot of the correspondences that deal with fraud, cybercrime, and the like. That's another area, forensics, forensic analysis of computers. How do you put it together? How do you gather the evidence first? How do you preserve it? Then how do you present it? Uh, I'm one of those people that really didn't get into all the elements of digital correspondence to be able to de-encrypt it or even, in fact, encrypt it to protect it. But today, that's a science. There's a lot of law enforcement that deals with that, and some of it's private consultants. There's a tremendous amount of work there as well. I'm going to switch the page. Kevin, anything to add to that?
Yeah, I just wanted to reinforce the private sector as well. We do have it's a growing field, and some of these companies, and getting back to one point John made, that it's a great time to be going into this profession because there is such a need from law enforcement to corrections, even in the courts, for good people to come in there and make a difference. So now is the time. It's a buyer's market, if you will. So we see applicants that can literally choose which department, if they meet the criteria and the qualifications. But again, the private sector, with Homeland Security and the cyber crime, which is, forensic analysis, which is, changing as quickly as technology is, right? And it's sometimes it makes your head spin. But there are some folks, in fact, we have an instructor, Andy, John, Andy Coda's son is Andrew. He's in his early 30s. He's a vice president at JP Morgan in their security department. And he's a and he got his master's here as well. And I think he's teaching here now.
Yes.
So he's, JP Morgan, one of the biggest companies on the planet, and they're literally unlimited resources. I wish we could say that, John, years ago, unlimited resources.
Right.
But
Right.
there is such a difference. So that is another avenue for folks to, people with the degrees in criminal justice to go. So again, it's not just law enforcement and corrections and the courts.
One quick thing also, I'm just going to add this in because, as you realize, Kevin and I both have had afterlives beyond our retirements from law enforcement or corrections or wherever. I just mentioned Andrew Coda. I'm thinking of Matt Riley. A lot of folks are able, because the retirements are typically a bit better than you would find in the private sector. When I say private sector, I don't mean in criminal justice. I'm saying, you go work in a bank or something like that, you're going to have quite a bit of years to do, and your benefit package is probably second to what you would see with regard to state, city, or federal employment. Most of them are somewhere around right today, they're about a 25-year retirement where you can pull your pension and your medical benefits. Um, we were fortunate enough to have a 20-year retirement. Now it changes. My guess is that they'll probably try to bring back the 20. I don't know if they'll be successful, but as you start a career, and this was good advice was given to me, always consider not just the pay, but the benefits. When you
Right.
think about benefits, particularly retirement benefits, that's for the rest of your life. And it makes a difference because if you can, you do a good career, you're able to retire in good standing, you collect your pension and some medical benefits, you go out, you can begin another career. Believe it or not, I have a daughter who's approaching retirement at this point in time. And that's something she's going to probably do as well. Pick up her pension, probably do something in the forensic analysis area, the digital forensics, because that's one of the things she does. She's a detective in one of the cities in Connecticut. And she enjoys what she does because it brings people to justice that otherwise could evade it. And there's a big demand, like I said, for police officers, but also for the subject matter experts that you become once you've had a career. So I don't want to spend too much on that, but always keep your eye not just on what you're doing at the moment, what you're doing through that career, but your life goes on much longer than maybe your initial career, and you may have a second shot and another opportunity to do a second career.
John, we have a question as you're changing
Sure,
screens.
sure.
This is from Teresa. So, do you need a degree? Do you need to have a degree in criminal justice to be a part of any type of reform, particularly corrections? So, that depends. I can tell you from the federal level, most every agency in the federal law enforcement agencies requires a bachelor's degree. The
Mhm,
FBI is 100% certainty, and I believe most of the other ones are as well. So that's something to remember. It depends on the community. I think departments are starting to go to that more and more. I always felt, I mean, we had kind of a mix. We'd hire people with degrees and people who worked. Not not that people with degrees don't work, but some people, people were like blue collar or had other jobs and they had life experiences that we appreciated.
mhm,
I
mhm,
just found that all, to me, generally, if somebody had a college degree, they were generally more tolerant of and diversity and so forth. So.
mhm.
But John, she also mentioned corrections, so maybe you want to
Yeah,
touch
I
on that.
I would tell you we always favored college education. In fact, we were moving towards trying to make it a standard for an associate degree. Unfortunately, some of the best goals and some of the best outcomes we've gotten with that, when you have a crunch to keep enough people hired, you look at when you raise a standard, you may reduce your candidate pool quite substantially. And what Kevin said is very true. We had a lot of people that had great work histories that you're not going to say no to. You want to have the best candidates that have demonstrated that they're dependable, that they have those interpersonal skills, a good understanding of people. And again, every candidate should be looked at individually. Now, that said, if you go into the Connecticut Department of Correction, I can't speak for Commissioner Kiros right now. He's a great commissioner, by the way. But I know that we used to hire people with a 4-year degree with the intent that we could fill our counselor roles from our correction officer roles, our parole officer roles from our correction officer roles. So you start to see that having that college education, if you take an entry level position, it already has you qualified. And a lot of our folks never completed probation before they were promoted into that position that they really sought coming in. Served a couple of good purposes for us. We trained you on the inside as a correction officer, and if you went out onto parole, you knew the two worlds that were really connected directly. Somebody that would go to prison, be voted to parole, be released. You knew the consequences for somebody being returned. It gave you a better appreciation for your discretion and the like. So I would say a college education entering into correction is going to serve you very well, whether it's an associate or a bachelor's or even greater. One quick thing we did accomplish back a number of years back was we were able to waive the written exam with an associate degree. If social science, behavior science, criminal justice, or corrections. I don't know if they're still doing that. I presume they still have that ability, but that again shows the value that we placed on that in terms of our prospective employees in the career pathway. Sorry, I got a little long-winded on that. I like the Department of Correction, obviously, as you hear me talk a lot about it. Okay, so we're going to talk a little bit about not just a basic education, but maybe while you're getting your education, particularly your bachelor's, you might want to consider things like degree concentrations, the things that interest you most in criminal justice. And again, if it's something more, like I always talk about the forensic science, some people really get the bug for that. And that's a great area. It's very rewarding. Again, you speak to the science when you speak to the evidence, and it's really pretty good. So some of the things that I thought I'd mention just in this area, we're dealing with graduate education. When you get to the bachelor's degree, one of the things that was popular when I was in and looking at master's degrees was, do you get one in public administration? Do you get one in, business administration, something like a master's of public administration, or do you get it in criminology? Do you decide to make the big break and go to law school? Those are all great options for you as you find your way through it. So I'm going to drop down to that next little line there that you see, degree concentrations. I think these are really helpful. If you wanted to be a police officer, I would tell you, yeah, there's two right off the top. One would be law enforcement, crime scene investigation. Be a police officer, you're starting off in law enforcement. But if you want to be a detective, which I think a lot of police officers have an aspiration to do, that crime scene investigation, it's a nice concentration. You go through all the specialty areas of investigation, arson, digital, etc., crime scene in general. But again, prepares you. If you're thinking you maybe want to study a little bit more of the law, then you got the option to take some legal studies as a concentration. Um, we have a partner in a different area, which is David Genetti. David was the assistant deputy chief in Waterbury, and one of his expertise areas was emergency management and obviously Homeland Security with September 11th during his tenure. So we could also get that. That's a very high demand position, pays very well, usually a little bit separate, but you coordinate among all the first responders, police, fire, FEMA, if FEMA has to come in for something. So great stuff. Corrections, we have two, corrections concentration for general work in corrections, and then correctional counseling. Uh, One last one I didn't mention in here, I sort of wish I did, but it's really where you have all the social sciences together. It's not really a free flow, but it's basically allowing you to take courses in psychology, sociology, human services, to be able to craft your own interdisciplinary studies. So you could take almost literally any of the courses you see mentioned here in the other concentrations, but to really craft it to the point where if you liked psychology, maybe build a few more courses that build upon adolescent to, maybe abnormal psychology and forensic psychology and the like. So again, helps you with deciding as you get along that, geez, maybe I do want to go in. Maybe I do want to get a master's. Maybe it's not one of those areas. Maybe it's going to be in master's in counseling, professional counselor. We offer that here too at Post University. So I think Kevin and I spoke at the very beginning saying we've perpetually been students. And I mean that more than just the academic sense. We learned an awful lot in our careers about people that connected to our education, but that continuous process of learning. When I did go back to get my master's, I was usually inspired by some of the things that I saw, some of the things that I saw in terms of other persons that were mentors and leaders in the field that inspired me to go to a specific direction. So keep that in mind as you do look at education and you do look at further education. Kevin, I'm going to get ready to switch. You got anything to add here?
Yeah, I'm just you may be getting to this, John. I forgot what's next on here, but um, I think we're going to talk about some of the requirements throughout not only Connecticut but across the country.
Mhm.
But we also talk about soft skills, right? So,
Yeah, that's
you know,
coming up. Mhm.
the okay, so I'll sort of wait for that then. I
Okay,
don't want to jump ahead.
there you go.
There we go.
I'll get you
That
right
makes
there.
sense.
You're
All
right
right.
on the money, of
Look at
course.
that. I'm ahead of the curve here. Um, so having that degree, definitely gives a person that uh, heads up, right? That extra benefit. But there are people skills, and whether it's corrections, law enforcement, as I mentioned before, John mentioned, you really have to be able to communicate with people. We see, especially today, with all that's going on, the simple art of talking to somebody and communicating, and that means my mother always said you have two ears and one mouth, use them in that proportion. And so active listening, kind of listening to what the other person has to say before we, and I'm guilty of this too, before we jump in and offer our opinion, right? And so we see police officers in tough situations and delicate situations. Uh, but kindness does not equal weakness, right? Kindness and empathy, because we don't know what somebody is going through in their lives. And as a police officer, as you go to a scene, you don't know truly what's going on in that person's life. And a crime is a crime, and the law law should be enforced, but it's the way you go about it. And that is so important, those soft skills, and you develop that even more. And it's often, John, you learned it too. It's, well, okay, that didn't work, so let me let me try a different approach, right? And you make a mental note and say, all right, don't do that again. So it's that continuous learning. I think once we stop yearning to learn, then we hit a wall, right? And that's sort of the end of where we go in our advancement. So I just think I've always, my career went on, those soft skills. There are other names for that too, but just that empathy, that ability to talk and listen, and just maybe sometimes somebody has to vent for 15
Mhm.
minutes, and then you're not escalating. The key is to de-escalate any situation as best you can. And we develop support, and we continue that public trust when we do that. So I just think that is it's so important. And when we see officers getting in trouble, a lot of times they're not using those skills. They're not. You're a police officer. You show up on scene. You're in charge, right? So it's how you handle that authority and what you do with it, and to come to hopefully a peaceful resolution, whether you have to make an arrest or not. So I just wanted to make sure that we discussed that, because it's too important to overlook.
It's one of those things that I really felt very comfortable when I had college education and I began my career. One of the things I always thought was the most important was that ability to, and I said this earlier, practical application of social sciences. You understand that people that are under stress, people that are going through things that you don't see anything but the moment, but to have that background in education that tells you, I understand people and where they come from, how they perceive me in that particular circumstance, what they're expecting and what they get, really can be very disarming and
Yeah.
really helps you be completely successful. Not in every case, I'll be the first to tell you, you won't learn everything in a textbook that works, but you will learn it in the field as you develop those skills even further. So you'll get a lot of that good stuff. Practical application, social sciences gives you the power to understand. Power to understand is the power to control, really. And I think people appreciate it. I can't tell you how many times after difficult circumstances,
Mhm.
both sides of the equation tell you, wow, that went really well. Didn't expect that. And that's what we really understand as you go forward is okay, we got past that one. The next one might not be exactly the same, but it gives you that point of reference for improving and continuously keeping that spiral going, spiral of improvement.
I had a just and to jump on that, the impact that it really is rewarding because a lot of times again it's whether you're a police officer or you're a corrections officer and how you're treating someone who's incarcerated, the respect, again, not it's not weakness, it's just respect for who they are. Um, and the impact, we don't realize it, maybe ever. But I was at a restaurant 3 years ago and with a friend of mine, and this woman came up. I didn't know who she was, and she asked if I was Sergeant Hale. I'm like, God, I haven't been a sergeant in a long time. She goes, I don't know if you remember me, and she was the victim of a very violent home invasion, sexual assault. It was just a nightmare of a case. And I came in later on. I was on the periphery, but I had to deal with her and her family, and she started literally teared up and gave me a hug and said, I'll never forget you, the way you and the other officers just treated us in the worst day of our lives, and you just we'll always remember that. And like, I had no idea. I had no, and so those things are rewarding, and it's years later, and a case that I remember, but I don't remember my actions. So, we have those impacts where maybe it's an elderly person that calls and says, I can't figure out the TV remote, or, and just, help them out. And it's so impactful. Again, it's in the courts, it's in corrections, but you have the ability, um, to really make a difference. And I think we need that so desperately now, probably more than ever.
Lots of stakeholders. You forget it's not just the immediate person you're dealing with. There's a victim perhaps in the case. There's also all the other bystanders that are looking to you for leadership. They're looking for you to be the voice of reason. They're looking for you to be exactly what they expect, the person that upholds that public trust.
Yeah.
So, lot to be at stake every time that you're out there in the public doing your job. All right. You guys are in really good shape because a lot of you know much more about the digital world than I will ever know. And it makes you much more comfortable with things like that that become part of criminal justice every day. That's the thing I mentioned a little earlier, with cyber crime, whether it's fraud, phishing, or if it's something that involves pretty terrible stuff. There's a lot of child pornography out there that there seems to be a very dark web that supports that. You've got to be able to find it, de-encrypt it, preserve it, manage the chain of custody, and be able to present it in a fashion that's legally able to be sustained through the court system. So you can imagine if it's money and you got to be able to demonstrate that clearly. A lot of that's digital. Some of that's also going to be a higher level of understanding in terms of, things like accounting. Uh, Something like the digital transmission of illegal items like pornography, child pornography especially. There's a lot of rules with the court about what you can put into evidence that isn't so inflammatory that the jury becomes inflamed and says, we're angry, we're just going to convict this person. So, these require a high level of skill, understanding, not just of the evidence, not just how to collect it, but again, what's the legal threshold for what goes from proof to prejudice, to prejudicing a jury? I don't mean you're a prejudiced person by submitting something that is just, like we say, it's a photograph, pictures don't lie. But again, there's a lot more to it. Um, Kevin covered this, I thought, really well, that the ethics of the professions, they're very much very challenging. They're there throughout the day. They're there even in court, especially in court, I would say, Kevin, would you say? Uh, I think that we have to be prepared to go to court. Truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth. That
That's
used
right.
to be used to be more than just a saying, and it really today is
Right.
really at the paramount of everything you do. If you don't have ethics, you don't have honest, full, commitment to your duty, and you do make a mistake. Am I correct, Kevin? I think the Brady rule says we can't keep you employed if you don't tell the truth.
No,
And
right. Candor is the number one I used to tell that to new officers right out of the academy, the first morning out of the academy, and said, "Let me just tell you what's going to get you fired," which
Mhm.
is, they thought was kind of an odd approach, but you're just you put all this effort in and say, "Listen, don't lie to me, don't lie to anybody, because the
Mhm.
minute you lie and we can prove that you lied, your career is over across the country forever."
That's right. That's
Because
right.
nobody will, a prosecutor will not take your case. They will not work on you. If you make an arrest, it's going nowhere. So
Mhm.
now you're kind of a waste to the department. and
Mhm.
and actually you will get decertified through the post council. And good luck getting on landing another police job anywhere at that point.
Yeah, but there's a national registry if you cross that threshold. Am I correct on that?
Yeah,
Or there's still, yeah, okay.
I think the states have them, then they
Yeah.
share. So if you wanted to go to Texas, they'll do a background check and so the information is there. The
Mhm.
information is there. So
Mhm. Yeah, it's just a good thing. It's always, I tell people too that the biggest thing you can do for yourself is every day go in, do your job in good faith every day to the best of your ability. You'll never be touched for liability, and you'll never have to worry about your job ever.
right.
So it's just great advice. I want to just touch this again. I mentioned it sort of starting up that one of our best tools is our alumni that have left post or left other educational settings and gone out to the field and have something to offer from their experiences, especially every stage of the process. Some people that have just become successful officers, some will become sergeants, some will become correctional counselors or parole officers. They come in and they'll talk to you about, what I learned here or what I learned in my education that serves me every day. One of the things that helped me get the job was what I did when I was at school, especially things like internship. I can't tell you how many times students who have taken internships. I was up in the SUNY system for 16 years before I came down here, and we required an internship in the 2-year program we had. And I have to tell you that that was probably the biggest factor of their education that helped them cross the threshold from education to career. You go to work in an agency, you do a project in that agency, something that is of value to the employer, and at minimum, if they don't have a position to offer you, they have a reference that goes with you
Yeah.
from that to the next job. And I can tell you these, I call everybody kids because I'm old, guys. I apologize, but I'm pretty old. And I used to see these young men, young women going out into these internships, and it was like they would ricochet from county to county, start off as a dispatcher, go to be a detention deputy, go to be a parole deputy, then go to the city. And it was just like I was telling you, you do your time. You always reward the person who gives you the job. You don't ever sell them short. You don't ever quickly depart from them to the next thing. You keep your commitments. But they've wound up in wonderful jobs. They're having wonderful careers even as we speak. And it started with the internship, that practical application of what you've learned in school. You bring it to a job, you show them that you got the soft skills, you show them that you can do a project, you're a self-starter, you got some initiative. The rest takes a natural course. I did want to mention one thing you see down the bottom of that slide, there's a job portal. I just listed one example because you asked earlier, education or what kind of preparation do you need? If you go on USA Jobs, which is the federal employment service, if you want to call it that, you'll see that if you put in FBI, you'll see what they are looking for. Sometimes they're looking for a person with a college education that also speaks, maybe Chinese, Farsi, Mandarin was what they were looking for a while back. But all those languages were important to things we were doing in different parts of the world. Forensic science, obviously, if you got skills in ballistics, forensic science degree, ballistics, that's one that they advertise occasionally. Sometimes they're looking for people who are educators. All right. So if you've got a degree in education, they also were finding places for people I don't know exactly what their application is for each and every one of these, but you can see if you want to go into it, what you'd have to develop for your educational background. U.S. Marshal, you're interested in that, you could do that. You're looking for the alcohol, tobacco, and firearms. You could go and put that into USA Jobs. And the nice part, I think about USA Jobs is, well, we're here in Connecticut, but people come to post from all over the country, pretty soon from all over the world. We do have some international students, but you could actually say, well, I'm interested in working in the northeast part of the United States or the southwest part of the United States. And they will only notify you of those jobs if that's what you choose. And you create a job agent. You put your resume in, you continue to update it, and they will notify you you're eligible. Press here to apply. It's almost that simple.
Yeah.
So again, study what it is. You're getting your education, but you should also have the short term. I'm here, I'm looking at getting my associates. What am I going to do next? I'm going to get my bachelor's, and then next I'm applying for jobs. Know what you're going to need to get to that job that you're shaping your education around. And that way you're going to really satisfy both the educational and the professional goal at the same time.
I think, yeah, well said, John. And just as a to get serious here for a minute, so if you're applying to whether it's state, local, state, county, federal, you're you have to have a clean background. It
Yes.
doesn't mean if you get a ticket for going through a red light that you're going to get turned down. I mean, there are things that agencies can work with, but things they're going to dive into your background, and so I we make this recommendation. I make it in all my classes, and John, I'm sure you do this. I know you do the same thing.
Mhm.
What is it that if you have a questionable background, if listen, we've all done dumb things years ago, right? And again, we can work around that. If you have questionable posts or information on your social media, that's going to be seen. And so, if you pass along some inappropriate joke or whatever, that's going to be seen. And you're going to have to answer for that. So the advice is clean it up, uh, delete it if whatever it is it takes you. Understand that you're not going to be able to hide that. And I don't think delete truly means delete anymore. I think there's a record of everything somewhere. So
Mhm.
just fair warning, I guess. Be prepared
Yeah.
that your background, your life, what you've done to this point. Again, mistakes. We all make mistakes. We're human beings, but understand that there may be questions, and you may have to answer for things you did or didn't do over the
Mhm.
course of your adult lifetime. So
Mhm.
important stuff.
Yeah. And the jobs that you'll be qualified for that you may apply for, depending upon the level of government you're going into, it may require a higher degree of background scrutiny, possibly even including polygraph. Now, that's nothing to be afraid of. It's just the idea that make sure you do your what would you call it? Your due diligence on your social media
Yeah.
and self-examination too. If you were passing jokes on, I don't even know what I could even say at this point, but if you did have jokes that you were passing along, think about what's really not funny when you look at it from a different person's perspective. And at this point in time, it's easier to own what's in the past as you're moving forward and be able to say, yeah, when I was a kid, when I was 18, 17, 16, it was different when I went to college, when I had a career in mind, when I thought about who I was as an individual and who I wanted to be as an adult and a professional. So it's never too late. And I would say just pay attention to it. Be the person you really want to be all the time, full time, and you'll be fine. You'll absolutely be fine.
I think that's it, John. Right? Are we not at the end here?
Yeah, I think so. I think that's it. Conclusion and next steps, key takeaways. You got a lot of opportunities, without a doubt. Just always keep your focus on where you want to be and develop relationships. I be honest with you, one of the things I didn't mention is you're going to meet a lot of fellow students in your pathway, and those are the leaders along with you of tomorrow. And I still am in contact. In fact, this weekend I saw several people I grew up with. We went to school together. We went into different law enforcement agencies and criminal justice agencies. We're all retired now. And when I say retired, we retired and did other things. But you know what? Those were resources for me and my network. I could call them. I work for the state, they work for cities, and I could pick up the phone, call them and say, what's going on with this? What's going on with that? They could do the same for me. We could answer one another's questions, and it really helped our professional growth along the way. So again, keep it in mind, all the things you're going to want to do as a student. But remember, as a student, you're going to become a professional, and having a professional network that's going to grow its own is going to be nice for you to be able to rely on. I had people I could call in the federal government, the state government, city governments. It's really great stuff. Uh, Keep your ethics in check. We just talked about ethics in the profession, but right now, ethics as an individual, what you're doing on that social media is important. Keep it in mind as you go forward. And again, don't hesitate while you're considering education. If you're thinking that you want to do something in criminal justice, Kevin and I are here. So is our career office. So don't hesitate, to touch base with them. They can also help if you have an idea you would like to construct something for your future. Maybe we could put something together to help you out. So again, all these things are, I think, very important for you to try to keep in mind. I think that's it, Kevin. And
Yeah, we've been sort of answering questions, and Nicole
yeah,
is here. I see she's jumped in on a bunch of questions. So are there any more? Anybody else? You know,
Yeah, thank you so much, Kevin and John, for being here. So informative.
okay,
yeah,
great.
we're glad
Sorry, I
glad to
couldn't
do it.
stifle my former criminal justice professor. I
Yeah,
had to jump in and answer questions.
no, I appreciate it. Glad you're
You're
another
making me want to
another
go back to
resource.
teaching now.
Yeah. Well, we've got room, Nicole. So
Yeah.
Hey, you might entice me. You guys, we have about 5 minutes left. If you have any questions, you want to raise hands, Dave can take you off mute, or feel free to pop them in the chat. I'm watching the chat as well.
Either way works.
There's somebody's got a hand up, I see. LP.
Okay, I'll take you off mute. Or allow you to come off mute yourself. Hold on one second. And there you go. Your mic's allowed, so you can go ahead and take yourself off mute when you're ready.
I just had a question on when you guys address the background. If you've had a criminal background and get it expunged, could you still work in this field?
Yeah, I can
yeah.
give you one perspective on that, just so you know, if you ever have had any kind of record, any juvenile record, expunged record, they may ask you a question about it. Always be truthful. All right. I used to hire people that had, when I say a criminal record, nothing extensive, but if you had an arrest, even a conviction, it really depends upon what it was. Now put that aside for a second. One of the things that Kevin mentioned earlier is truthfulness. They are looking to make sure that you tell the truth. I had a student that went to an interview for the Vermont State Police, and they asked him a question: have you ever been arrested? All right. And he was advised by an attorney to say no, because he was arrested as a juvenile and it was a sealed record. Well, most states have an exemption for that part of a process for background and character. It's not a disqualifying factor unless you lie. So just be careful with that. Tell the truth and say, yes, I was, it's expunged, and then they move on. I can assure you of that. They move on. Is only legitimate for veracity of information and your truthfulness as a candidate. And I will tell you too, some agencies like my agency, I set up a sort of a scaffold to say if you've ever been in trouble, you had misdemeanors, by the way. If it's a felony conviction, it's a little bit different. Not a little bit, it's quite a bit different. But a misdemeanor, you had it as a kid, 16, 17-year-old kid in the city, you know what? Chances if you grew up in the suburbs, even if you had the same kind of situation, you might not have gotten arrested, might not have gotten convicted. So basically, we would ask you, have you ever been? Tell us the truth, because we already know. We don't ask you any question we don't know the answer to. All right? Understand that. So we have criminal justice information, which is not public information. And we have to handle it according to the law, which says we can ask you the question. And what depends on it is not what happened to you in the past, it's whether you tell the truth at that moment. Now, that being said, people that have a record, we'd ask them, what did you learn from it? And ask you to write a short paragraph, well, paragraph or statement on it. And basically, as long as you took ownership, it said, yeah, I learned a lot from that moment. I learned it. I'm answering questions about it today, things I wouldn't have thought about when I was a kid. I'm a mature individual now, and I've gone to school. I've done a lot of things right since then. And I don't disagree with that. And people need a shot. People need an opportunity. I was in the second chance business, so it was a little easier for me to look at that perspective. But you still have to do it in a way that you keep the most qualified candidates, and there are some disqualifiers. But again, mostly that's active felony conviction on record. Answer your question, okay?
Yeah, thank you so much.
Yeah, and if you have any question anytime you're going for an interview or something, feel free to call. I mean, I can't give you legal advice per se, but I can tell you how the process works.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
Nicole, I see there's a couple more in there, but I also know that you folks have something else planned at 7.
Yeah, I can definitely stay on as long as you all feel like you have another minute or two to answer a question.
Yeah, so there was one becoming a probation officer after a felony record with a few misdemeanors. Again, I think John said it well, but it's also situational, right? So if when did it happen? What was involved? As John said, what did you learn? Yeah, and to be quite frank, not everybody can go into this profession, right? It's just there are disqualifiers, and there have to be for a reason. But without getting into too many details, I guess I would say it's situational. Felonies are a little bit harder to get around, right? There's a little more that has to go into that, and again, it depends on what the conviction is for. So again, that's something that it's really situational what you want to do. And then you've mentioned state police, but is the chance of probation officer different? I don't know. Did we answer that? Mention this, Steve. Okay. I guess we answered that. Anybody else? Again, John and I are available. We could, well, Nicole, you have our
Mhm.
email information. So if anybody has any
Absolutely.
questions, don't hesitate to reach out.